Madam President.
The senator from Texas.
Madam President, just this week, we saw the college football national championship game. There are a lot of tremendous athletes engaged in tremendous feats of skill and strength. But I have to say, there wasn't an athlete on the field that demonstrated the flexibility that we are seeing in the United States Senate right now. We are today seeing Democrats in the Senate, with the active encouragement of President Joe Biden, engaging on not one but two partisan power grabs, and doing them both with a twist. Let me explain. Democrats are desperate to hold on to power. It's their number one priority. It's more important than anything else. It's more important than jobs in our economy to Democrats. It's more important than getting kids back to school. It's more important than defeating COVID. Nothing matters more to today's Democrats than stay in power no matter what. How do we know that? Well, the very first bill introduced in the House of Representatives, H.R. 1. It's a bill many of us call the Corrupt Politicians Act. It's a bill designed to keep Democrats in power forever. That was Nancy Pelosi's number one priority. The very first bill introduced in this chamber, S1, is likewise the Corrupt Politicians Act, a bill designed to keep Democrats in power forever. It is the number one priority of elected Democrats. When that failed to get sufficient votes to pass, Democrats shifted to option 1B. Option 1B has the same objective: keep Democrats in power forever, but it's through a little twist of a sleight of hand. Now, Democrats want to subject every significant decision concerning voting to the unreviewable, in most instances, arbitrary power of an unelected bureaucrat in the Federal Department of Justice. My state of Texas has 29 million people. Those 29 million people have democratic rights. They have rights to elect legislatures that reflect their views, their policies, their values. You know what Senate Democrats say? We don't care. We don't care what those 29 million people want. We, the Democrats, want to stay in power. So let's take, for example, photo ID. I have in my wallet my driver's license. Most people do. Voter ID is a policy that is supported by the overwhelming majority of Americans. Roughly 80% of Americans support voter ID requiring a driver's license to vote. 2/3 of African American voters support voter ID. It is overwhelmingly supported across the country. You know who doesn't support it? Elected Democrats. Sadly, every single Democrat in this chamber has been willing to go on board with proposals to strike down voter ID laws. And here's what the Democrats want to do. They want to say that even though the voters of Texas want voter ID, because we want elections with integrity, we want to know that if you come in and vote and say your name is John Doe, that you're not somebody else pretending to be that person. Congressional Democrats don't care. They want to have an unelected bureaucrat with the ability to strike that down. Likewise, ballot harvesting. Ballot harvesting is one of the most corrupt practices on this country. It's the practice whereby paid political operatives go and collect the ballots of other people. So, for example, you have a young operative from the DNC come into a nursing home and go room to room. Now, some of those residents may no longer be competent to make a choice. They may not be aware of their surrounding. But for an unscrupulous operative, that doesn't stop them. That operative can sit there and say, "Sir, ma'am, you want to vote for so-and-so, don't you?" Can fill out the ballot for them. And you know what? If there's some obstreperous senior in a nursing home who says, "Gosh, I really want to vote for the other guy," well, it's very simple for the unscrupulous operative to take that ballot. This ballot's for the other guy, and magically it ends up in the trash. Never gets mailed in. They can just mail in the ballots that they agree with, throw away the ballots they disagree with. There's a reason the majority of states have made ballot harvesting illegal. It invites voter fraud. By the way, Madam President, it wasn't long ago when people on both sides of the aisle recognized this. The most significant bipartisan effort examining voter fraud, the study of a bipartisan commission called the Carter-Baker Commission. Baker is former Republican Secretary of State James Baker. Carter is former Democratic President Jimmy Carter. The Carter-Baker Commission concluded that voter ID was an important step to stopping voter fraud. The Carter-Baker Commission concluded that voter fraud was a real and significant problem undermining the integrity of elections. And the Carter-Baker Commission identified ballot harvesting as one of the most dangerous practices encouraging voter fraud. As I said, the Carter-Baker Commission was former Democratic President Jimmy Carter. Hardly a right-wing Republican operative by any stretch of the imagination. It used to be, when sanity was permissible in the Democratic Party, that people would acknowledge the obvious. Unfortunately, we're in hyper-partisan times. And so today, Senate Democrats want to be able to have laws on voter ID, want to be having laws prohibiting ballot harvesting, struck down by one unelected bureaucrat. And by the way, who is that bureaucrat? Currently, it's a woman named Kristen Clark, head of the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. Ms. Clark is one of the most radical partisan nominees ever to serve in the United States Department of Justice. She is one of the leading advocates in the country for abolishing the police. By the way, every single Democrat in this chamber voted to confirm her, despite the fact that she's one of the leading advocates in the country for abolishing the police. She has been a hardcore, left-wing, partisan advocate her entire life. Now, she's entitled to have her views. She's entitled to believe those views passionately, but here's what Senate Democrats want to do. They want to take this one person and say, she can strike down the laws adopted by legislatures elected by 29 million Texans. That's extraordinary. Now, Madam President, what could justify such a thing? Well, we saw Joe Biden give an incredibly demagogic, racist speech accusing half the country of being racist, of being Bull Connor. The Democrats say this is Jim Crow 2.0. And you know, Madam President, ironically, and I think inadvertently, the Democrats are telling the truth. They don't mean to be, but they are. What was Jim Crow 1.0? Jim Crow 1.0 were laws that were written almost exclusively by elected Democrats. You look at the authors of Jim Crow, they were Democrats, as were the founders of the Ku Klux Klan. And the purpose of Jim Crow laws was to do one thing: stop the voters from voting Democrats out of office. Because you look at the African Americans who were freed from slavery, they were electing Republicans. In many instances, they were electing black Republicans. And the Democrats didn't want that. How dare the voters select someone not from their party? And so Jim Crow was written to strip the right to vote from the voters who dared to vote against Democrats. Well, fast forward to today. The Corrupt Politicians Act is Jim Crow 2.0. It is once again written by Democrats to strip the right to vote from the American people to prevent them from voting Democrats out of office. Listen, a lot of Democrats are really nervous right now. Pretty much everyone in Washington recognizes that in November, we're going to see a wave election. Pretty much everyone in Washington understands that in November, Republicans are going to retake the House of Representatives, probably by a big margin. And there's a very good possibility we'll retake the Senate as well. Democrats can't defend their policies. They can't defend the rampant inflation that is hammering seniors and working class people across the country. They can't defend the chaos at the open borders. They can't defend the jobs being destroyed. They can't defend the lawless and abusive vaccine mandates, and they certainly can't defend their catastrophic surrender and failure in Afghanistan. Madam President, it's gotten so bad that when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris went down to the state of Georgia, Stacey Abrams, the candidate, the Democratic candidate running for governor in Georgia, and I would note, Stacey Abrams still maintains to this day she won the last election. She insists the last election was stolen, and she is the sitting governor. Apparently, this is her re-elect campaign. Stacey Abrams refused to show up to be seen with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Even while Biden was giving this racially demagogic speech, which Stacey Abrams has made a career of doing, Ms. Abrams did not show up for the speech. She said she had a scheduling conflict. Madam President, you and I have both served some time in the Senate. We've both seen instances where the President of the United States was visiting our home states. I can tell you, as a senator, you make time to be there if you want to be there. It's clear Ms. Abrams did not want to be there, that she looked at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and sees their poll numbers plummeting. She sees their policies failing, and she wanted to be nowhere near that. So what's the Democrats' approach? If they can't win on the merits, if they can't defend their policy failures, if they can't convince the voters, then let's go back to the Jim Crow policies the Democrats authored to begin with. This is Jim Crow 2.0. Strip away the power of the voters to make a choice, put an unelected bureaucrat in charge of election laws, and throw out the decisions of 29 million Texans. Madam President, I'll tell you this, Democrats don't get to claim they're defending democracy when they are literally taking away the rights of Democratic elected legislatures. That's many things, but it ain't democracy. One unelected bureaucrat overruling 29 million Texans is not democracy. It's a power grab. But I told you this was a power grab on top of a power grab with a twist. The second power grab is, how are they going to try to pass the Corrupt Politicians Act? They're going to do it by nuking the filibuster. The rules of the Senate, written in that book that sit on the dais in front of you, say that to proceed to legislation takes 60 votes in this Senate, takes 60% of the senators. Those are the Senate rules. They're black and white. They're clear. If you don't like the Senate rules, there's a way to change that. You can amend the Senate rules. It takes 67 votes to amend the Senate rules. A number of us have proposed amending the Senate rules. I myself have repeatedly gone to Democrats saying I'd be happy to work with Democrats on proposals to amend the Senate rules to allow senators on both sides to offer more amendments. Democrats haven't been willing to do so. Instead, what Democrats intend to do, what they want to do, what President Biden is urging them to do, is to break the Senate rules, to change the Senate rules. It's called nuking the filibuster. If their plan is successful, Senator Schumer will stand up and seek a ruling from the chair as to whether it takes 60 votes or 50 votes to proceed to legislation. The chair will say, if the chair is following the rules, it takes 60 votes. And then Senator Schumer will move to reconsider the ruling of the chair and overrule the ruling of the chair and say, even though the words on the page say 60 votes, from now on it's 50. It's another brazen power grab. Now, Madam President, there may be some folks at home who are a little cynical of the partisan times we find ourselves in, who are skeptical of claims perhaps made by both sides. But maybe you're a Democrat at home, and I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative Republican. You might be saying, you know what, if it's Cruz saying it, I'm a Democrat, I don't believe it. I understand that. This is a very partisan time. There's a lot of disagreements. So if you're a Democrat at home and you're inclined not to believe what I say, I'm going to suggest perhaps some people you can believe. I told you it was a double power grab with a twist. I want to point to you the words of President Joe Biden. If you're not inclined to believe a Republican, maybe you'll believe Joe Biden. Here's what Joe Biden said in 2019. This is not 1964. This is not 1954. 2019, a couple of years ago. Quote, ending the filibuster is a very dangerous move. If you're at home and you don't believe Republicans, do you believe Joe Biden? Was he lying when he said ending the filibuster is a very dangerous move, or was he telling the truth? Because that's what Joe Biden said just a couple of years ago. Now maybe you say, well, he was in a campaign, people say things. You can't hold him to fault for saying that. That's not fair. Okay? All right, so now you don't believe me and you don't believe Joe Biden. But let's see if we can find someone else. How about someone who serves in this chamber right now? How about someone who is the Senate Majority Leader right now? How about Senator Chuck Schumer? If you haven't actually watched this speech, I'd encourage you, go pull out your phone and Google it. You can find it real easily. Senator Chuck Schumer in 2015 gave a speech. I'm going to read to you verbatim what he said. He said, they want, because they can't get their way, to change the rules midstream. All right, what would be the effect of that? You change the rules midstream, you nuke the filibuster. What would be the effect of that? According to Chuck Schumer, the effect of that, to wash away 200 years of history. That's what Schumer says is the effect. Washing away 200 years of history, that sounds serious. Anything else? They want to make this country into a banana republic, where if you don't get your way, you change the rules. Wash away 200 years of history, make this country a banana republic. That's pretty serious stuff. That ought to concern us, but at least that's the worst it gets, right? Well, actually, no. Schumer continued. It'll be doomsday for democracy if we do. Madam President, there are reporters teeming the United States Capitol. Any reporter who wants to be something other than a partisan shill and mouthpiece for the Democrats ought to ask every single Democrat, Senator so-and-so, do you agree with Chuck Schumer that ending the filibuster will turn our nation into a banana republic? Do you agree, Senator so-and-so, that ending the filibuster would be doomsday for democracy? And by the way, if there are any reporters left who actually have journalistic ethics, you shouldn't just ask Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Right now, they're the lone Democrats with the gumption to stand up for democracy. But you ought to ask all 50 of them, every single one of the Democrats. Do you agree with Chuck Schumer ending the filibuster is doomsday for democracy? And if not, why? Is it just that your team is the one that can't get their way? Now it's your side that wants to change the rules midstream. Now it's your side that if you don't get your way, you change the rules. Was Joe Biden lying in 2019? Was Senator Schumer lying in 2005? I don't know, you ought to ask them. A double power grab with a twist. Jim Crow 2.0, seizing federal elections, striking down the laws adopted by Democratic legislatures, putting an unelected radical leftist bureaucrat in charge of elections with more power, this one leftist bureaucrat, than all 29 million people in the state of Texas. doing so by breaking the Senate rules to change the Senate rules, and the twist is with a dose of hypocrisy, unusual even for this place. Look, if a senator serves long enough, there'll be times when they may vote a little bit this way or a little bit that way. There are lots of senators that have had tensions with prior positions. I cannot think of another time when a senator has voted for something that he has called doomsday for democracy. That's not just a little hypocritical. And by the way, all the Democrats agreed with him. They were all standing shoulder to shoulder. In 2005, when Senator Schumer said this, he was either lying or telling the truth. If he was lying, I guess you should ask him why he was lying. If he was telling the truth, I guess you should ask 48 Democrats who don't care why they're willing to vote for doomsday for democracy. You want to understand the dangers of this double power grab with a twist? Look no further than the vicious, partisan, divisive, hateful speech President Biden gave, insulting half this country, oddly enough, blaming Republicans for the sins of his own party, the Democratic Party, who wrote Jim Crow and founded the KKK. All of us were sitting outside in the Capitol when President Biden gave his inauguration speech, when he talked about unity, when he talked about healing. You want to see the vicious partisanship that ending the filibuster will produce? You saw it. A double power grab with a twist of hypocrisy. Madam President, if there is a Democrat in this chamber who gives a damn about democracy, let me urge you, don't vote for what your own leader has called doomsday for democracy. I yield the floor.